is the first ever Defiant Lion show. This is my YouTube debut.
Oh,
So,
this episode one.
yeah, this is the first episode.
All right.
You are my honorary first guest, Kerm. So,
I am honored.
why don't you introduce yourself?
All right. So yeah. Okay. So let's put the basics out first. So yes, as you can see, I have a lot of hair on my chin.
Mm.
So odds are I'm a Muslim, and those odds are good. I am. Um, Having said that, I'm also a Trump supporter, and I think people would want to know that. What else? What else? Ask me something.
Well, I mean, I think it's, coming from an American perspective, it's hard to imagine someone being a Muslim and a Trump supporter, but obviously you have a different perspective from where you are.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, of course. Because look, I'm in a different place. Look, okay. So, I mean, okay. So, is Trump good for America or not? I don't know. I mean, I have my views and opinions. I generally do feel he is, but I wouldn't know that as much. What I do know is what he means for my region. And as far as I'm concerned, he's the guy who's going to drop the least amount of bombs on us. So I am a Trump supporter. Khatam baat.
Well, the person that would drop the least amount of bombs because he was running against a woman.
But well, yeah, okay, yeah. So I'm also male chauvinist. I always have been.
Uh,
I've been open about that. So there's another thing we'll discuss maybe later.
yeah, yeah. I mean, not. I'm not as much of a chauvinist as you, but I don't think many women make good leaders. I mean, there's few and far between in history, but way too many more examples of men being great leaders, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
So, so yeah. So okay, so this is how I see it. Um, you have a president now who is often talking, who is withdrawing troops. You have somebody who, at least where my region is concerned, goes, fine, screw you,
Yeah,
I'm not giving you aid, and we're like, yeah, fine, screw you too. And that's how it really works, man. I
yeah.
mean, yeah. So that's that.
Oh yeah, but yeah, because if you remember at the beginning of his presidency, the big controversy was the quote unquote Muslim ban, where it was really just a couple countries were banned from flying to the
Yeah.
U.S.
I
What
would.
was your opinion on that?
All right. So my opinion on that is the following. But are you also getting static when we talk?
Am I sound staticky?
A little, but I'm coming through fine.
Yeah, you're coming through fine. Maybe I just
All
need to
right.
fix my mic.
That's fine then. All right. So look, 7 countries, right? Okay. There are like 40 plus Muslim majority countries in the world. That's hardly a Muslim ban. Now let's look at those 7 countries. Okay. We'll talk about Iran later. I'll take Iran out. Okay.
All right.
Iran, each and every single one of those countries is an ISIS hotbed, an Islamic military hotbed. The governments are broken, the infrastructure is gone. Why would not one not want to be careful with those countries? And it's not
Yeah,
like he formulated the list.
yeah, yeah. Many people would consider those shithole countries. I mean, I know people live there. It's a horrible situation, but at the same time, you can't sacrifice too much of your own. Trying to think of the right word. You can't sacrifice too much of your own for others' sake.
Agreed. And look, don't get me wrong. I'm as my views on America as much as any other Middle Eastern person's views. I mean, those countries are shithole countries because of American interference. But the point is, right now, those countries are horrible and dangerous places. People coming from there will be dangerous. I mean, why would you not be careful of those countries?
Oh yeah, I mean, if you look at the history, those countries have been, at civil wars within each other for, the last 40, 50, 60, even to 200 years, if you really look back.
Yeah, I mean, look, okay, and like just to not be one-sided. I mean, like if you look at places like Iraq and all that, most of them they had tyrants, right?
Yeah.
And those tyrants were really the only stabilizing force that was keeping extremist militant groups in bay. They were
Oh,
and they were all secular, by the way.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
when American foreign policy decides to do a regime change and pull them down, that's when they created this problem. But
Oh yeah.
nonetheless, it's there. So now, even though I blame America for those problems, but then it would be idiocy then to just let them in as well. I mean, you gotta look after yours first more than anything else, man.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that brings me up to another interesting thing about you. You kind of have a lot of nationalist viewpoints. You're very within you're big on preserving the culture
Yes.
of your region.
Yeah, yeah, and I admire anybody else who does that too. You know,
Yeah.
although I did try to join a few white nationalist groups in Facebook, like, hey, we have the same views, just different colors. They didn't let me join, but that's besides the point. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I am, and I've always admitted I am a bit of a xenophobe, and I do have a problem when I see white folk in my country.
Yeah.
And yeah, and one of my, there are probably many reasons, and there might be some racism in there, I don't know, but one of the main reason is that the culture does get affected.
Yeah, yeah, and I come from a very multicultural area, and I understand. Like myself, I like multiculturalism a little bit because I like to have varieties. I like to have different kinds of food, different kinds of cultures. But when you really put too much into it, things start to get a mess. Because I mean, my area is great, but it also has a lot of fight, and you see different groups, constantly at each other's throats
It
and
will
stuff like that.
happen. It will happen. It will always happen. It's unavoidable. There are values are different from culture to culture, and they
Uh,
should be. Why should be the same? A lot of
Absolutely.
other cultures do not have the same values as Western values. They don't, nor should they be. And there
Mm,
will be a clash.
yeah,
But
a-
have you
and that kind, yeah,
you
and
said
that kind of
nationalism? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go on. Go on.
and that kind of brings you into like things that you see like in the EU where they're trying to internationalize things and make a more international law, and like you said, it's just people come from different places, they have different values, they have much different living situations. So I think another question that would be good, because the majority of people that I'm friends with are American, so you're going to be having a very big American audience. Why don't you just tell the people what it would be like on a day-to-day basis where you're from.
All right. Okay. So here's the thing. Where the Western media is concerned, I believe they get everything wrong about any country beyond Europe. They do, right?
Okay.
Cultural nuances, how it works, what. One of the biggest problems, one of the biggest things they get wrong is they like really make them monolithic. I mean, if I just talk about my country, because I'd be the one that I'd be most qualified to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Pakistan, right? I cannot actually summarize and pin down a cultural identity of Pakistan, because how it works is it differs from province to province,
Oh yeah.
differs from city to city, it differs from neighborhood to neighborhood. And I'll give you an example of to what extent it differs. All right.
All right.
So like for example, okay, so there'd be a neighborhood and there'd be apartments, and in those apartments, you will actually find roommates who are a male and female who are not married. So we
Okay.
have not married couples living in apartments,
So a
right?
more liberal area, so to
Yeah,
speak.
but I mean, this I'm just going to give you an idea, the picture of the contrast.
Right.
Uh, you just like go 4 blocks down, you go to another neighborhood, and there'd be a problem if you're holding hands in a park. So that's the level of contrast that you will find culturally, right? And I think
Right.
I think that's pretty much true for most countries, especially developing countries, because they're always fighting for identity anyways. You'll get that contrast.
And this is a
It's
cultural
ignored.
response, not a state response. It's not like the police are stopping people from holding their hands. It's more the townspeople that are, in the square are going to be yelling at you and stuff like that.
Oh yes, yes,
Right.
and it changes. I mean, it even changes from area to area. I mean, if there's a public outcry, like if there's a complaint, right? Hey, all these couples are sitting in our park, and it's not good for us. And the
Yeah.
police
Yeah.
will come and ask them to move on. But if there's no complaint, the police won't come. You
Yeah.
know? So, and it's interesting. I mean, and it's also like, for example, we did not. I mean, Simpsons, the movie, Deadpool, and God knows what. We didn't censor it. Apparently, China did, and Germany censored Evil Dead. We didn't censor Evil Dead. So it's all kinds of like up and down. It's more nuanced and complicated than one thinks.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because it's all about the aim. I mean, I think every government does it to a point. They try and hide from their citizens like a little bit. Like you said, censorship of certain movies where they may not be censored to you, but certain other movies may be censored before they get to you.
So it's interesting. Um, Christmas
Yeah.
malls are filled with Christmas trees and Christmas lights in Karachi, where I live,
Oh
right?
wow.
And we always have Christmas, all right? Everybody gets invited to a Christmas party. People who are not Christians will have a Christian Christmas party, okay?
Hmm. Right.
Um, of course, that would not be the case in Quetta. That's how it is. That's another
Yeah.
city.
Yeah. Qatar, the small little country, very rich in oil.
Yeah, no, Quetta is another province in Pakistan. So like different cities have very different approaches, and that's where I don't know BBC and CNN just loses out.
Oh
Like
yeah. Yeah, but like even here, like I'm from Massachusetts, the Boston area, and Boston differentiates from other cities in my area, and also Massachusetts is far different from Texas, Washington, Dakota. You know,
give
y-
me an
y-
example.
well, in Boston, labor unions are big. Down south, the labor unions aren't as big, so that's a big cultural difference. We're a lot more rugged, and to be upfront, we're assholes up here. We're not. Hey, how you doing? Nice to see you. We don't talk to our neighbors. Like, I've lived next to the same people for about 20 years. I don't even know their first name.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So that's like literally like an identifying factor for your region.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Whereas, in Texas or, in other southern states, they're very friendly. If I go down to Arizona, like everyone you walk by is going to say hi to you, how you doing, really nice. And you don't see that in places like Boston, New York.
Where is there more cultural diversity?
Um, well, mainly in the big cities. Basically, if you look at the election map, anywhere that's blue is the most cultural diversity because those are the big cities, and that's the area where I grew up. I grew up I actually grew up in an Asian neighborhood, so I was one of 10 white kids, probably the only Italian in the neighborhood. Um, so I kind of know what it's like to be a minority, growing up in an Asian neighborhood, and like you said, every neighborhood's different. Like you have the Asian neighborhood, you have the Irish neighborhood. You have all these different neighborhoods that are almost split up by race. I mean, it's not systematic to a point, but it is. You see a lot of the same people. You see the Italians gather in the North End, so on and so forth.
I think if a place is happens to have been by chance or is planned that way, it's set up to be able to accommodate multiculturalism, it works.
Mm,
But if it doesn't, it doesn't. I'd like to give you two examples.
all right.
So Dubai, you have people from everywhere there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Dubai, you have all kinds of expats from all over the world, and they're all fine, and they're all pretty much doing their thing.
Yeah.
But what you do see is they're all sticking to their own kind, though, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you see the Americans and the Britishers doing their own thing. You see the Thailand, Sri Lankans, having dinner separate. That's happening.
Mm,
But that's not what I saw in Singapore.
okay.
So in
Oh,
Singapore, you actually have them blending, and I think that's because they made a conscious effort to put in certain things that would make that happen. So I'm just saying, multicultural might work for some places. It definitely won't work for others.
yeah. Yeah, because you're talking about making such a big jump because you think about Boston. Boston has been differently cultured for a long time. Ever since the Pilgrims came over and started to meet with the Indians. Now, obviously, that didn't go so well. But so many immigrants came in through the ports of Boston and New York in the 1920s, 1900s to 1920s, and it just started off with like a multicultural area, and I think, like I said earlier, it's just when it becomes too much, where it becomes a real strain, and things get messy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a boiling pot. Some a little bit too much heat, you'll have it flying over the edge.
I mean, look, I mean, I am a bit of a xenophobe, so maybe that's what's influencing. But to think that deep inside we all have the same values and everything, even at score same, as I think that's a ridiculous concept. We are
Hmm.
different, and if we're different, every now and then that will clash.
Oh
It's
yeah,
unavoidable.
had a pop up. Uh, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's like you're gonna have a much bigger jump because I mean your area has been pretty culturally. I'm not gonna say conservative because that's not the right word, but it's been the same culture for a long, long time. So, you can't just shift and all of a sudden let people in. It would be too much of a change for you.
Honestly, I wouldn't even want to set people in.
Right.
But I also feel it also comes down to which people are you letting in. I mean,
Mm.
certain cultures won't be a clash, certain would be.
Yeah. Would you let me in?
I'll let you in as an individual, and you can come to my house, you can have
Yeah.
dinner with me, you can have lunch with me, and you can play Dungeons and Dragons with me.
Yeah. I just can't go walking down the street in certain neighborhoods because then it'll be pretty troublesome, right?
No, no, you can walk down the neighborhood, you look like one of us, man. It's fine.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is maybe I'm a bad example for that. I can blend in pretty much anywhere.
No, actually, I'll tell you something. My view on white folks is a minority view. If you're white, you get a lot of advantage over here.
Mm.
You can walk into a university, you'll have less credentials than me, and you will get the job if you're very obviously white. And that's probably got to do something with, I don't know, some kind of a
Th-
post-colonial complex, something.
No, yeah, that's not any kind of laws because over here we have certain diversity laws that will, cause a company to like, hire so many women or so many people of color to, make up the quotas.
I disagree with those.
Yeah, yeah, me too. It should be the best people involved no matter what, I think.
I mean, look, okay, so just based on what I see in Hollywood movies and TV shows. So if I go to a hospital, right, and I see, oh, not a hospital, I go to any service,
Yeah.
right, and I see, and I have an option of, okay, so I'm going to go to this guy, and the couple of people who belong to some minority. How can I not worry that, hey, is he here because he's qualified or because he fills some quota?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you really look at it when you're like a patron like that. It's more like if you're working and like for instance, like my old job, they obviously had to, work with quotas and stuff, and it's like this guy would be trying to get his nephew in, and this guy would try and be getting his nephew in, and they'd end up having to bring someone's niece in because they need to hire a woman.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But you can't help but think that, okay, was she brought in because she was qualified, or was she brought in because they have to fill that niche?
yeah, and actually, like I think that's more, damaging because it's like when you have that and say, someone from a different color is, working alongside you and the person says, "Oh, well, you didn't get here on your credentials, you got here on your skin color." And you know that wouldn't necessarily be wrong because there are the laws, and I had to imagine that people don't want to be in that position. They don't want to be judged by their skin color or gender, even if it's in a positive way.
Right. So, but then those laws are counterproductive. Look, so look, what have civil rights fought for? Civil rights have fought for equality. They fought for
Hmm.
that you don't judge me on the basis of my color or my background or whatever. You judge me on the basis of my merit.
Yeah.
But these laws, these quota laws, they're actually not hiring you then on the basis of your merit. So
Hmm.
they like they're making civil rights take 2 steps back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you look at what Dr. King said, I have a dream that people aren't going to be looked at by the color of their skin but by their character. I'm missing a word there, but you get it.
Yes, that's that. Pretty cool.
I don't usually quote Dr. King too much. I mean, he was one of the few good communists. Well, he is now. Um,
That's that.
but all jokes aside, you're absolutely right. It ends up being counterproductive, and not only that, it becomes hypocritical to the idea that you're trying to promote. And I think that's what really grinds my gears about it. That it's not that helping people out is a bad thing, but it's like you're going to be hypocritical about what the aim is.
Right. Talking about civil rights, I just thought of something. So it's something I see here culturally. I see here in the context of my region. So I
Okay.
want to lay it out and tell me your impression of it. So whenever you have any great civil rights movements and a minority previously persecuted, uh, whether it's based on ethnicity, race, or gender, once that particular movement starts winning and starts actually achieving, do you
Hmm.
feel that they then start also to an extent start becoming the very thing they opposed?
Um. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, because when you're talking about the people that are fighting against the power and then they become the power. So yeah, I mean maybe not, because I mean it's all about the battle, I guess. Someone's got to come up on top, and it's whatever their agenda is that's now on top, and now they're happy.
Yeah,
Um.
that's the point. Once they get their agendas, they actually want to expand, and they pretty much start becoming the very thing they were opposing. I mean, look,
Mm,
um, okay. If I look at a lot of, and obviously I'm talking about in my regional context, but if I think about a lot of encounters I've had these days, not
mm.
in those these days with feminists, I think I have every right to accuse them of misandry, you know, and
Oh
that's not what it's about, you know. Same with like, okay, so for example, in my region, there was a political party that rose up in defense of immigrants, right?
right.
Specifically immigrants from India because they were being persecuted and suppressed, which has happened. So that political party rose in power, and was fighting for the rights of the immigrants. And eventually, they sort of like became a racket in which they just became goons and they started being involved in criminal activities and in corrupt politics. And I believe that really happens, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, you see, and I'm sure you pay attention to a lot of the American things. Like you have a lot of presidential candidates now who are almost making absurd immigration plans or promises. Where it's I think the guy's name is Buttigieg. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. But he's a Democratic candidate, and he's basically talking about bringing in a lot more immigration and centralizing it into certain areas. So basically, that's going to make a vote, like everything's like sectioned off into provinces for voting when we vote for our senators,
This I'm, I'm,
legislators.
I'm not an American, but I'll quickly tell you this my view about this sudden, very desperate push from the left for open borders and getting everybody in, immigrants. Look, it's very simple, man. They want their votes. That's it. That's the only reason they want these immigrants in.
Hmm.
They, have you been following Brexit?
I have a little bit. I mean, there's so much going on. That's a Candace Owens. Yeah.
So I believe BBC and CNN are just not giving them enough coverage.
Oh,
It's
you're talking about Brexit?
no, Brexit. I'm talking about Brexit, Camden
Okay.
Owens, right? So like
Okay. Okay.
they need the left needs immigrants to come in. The left needs open borders because now the position they're in, I believe that's the only way they're going to get their votes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's my view as an outsider.
Yeah, well, I mean, the BBC, that's the British Broadcasting Company, and that's more of an American movement. So, I mean, you're not really seeing it much on the mainstream in America, and actually, you see things like hold on, I got another pop up here. Oh God.
Oh,
You see things like Facebook putting stops to certain kind of ideologies, certain types of subjects where they're basically trying to silence things, and it's like a lot of these things I'm not a big supporter of anyways, but it's like I can't just be like, oh well, just because I don't support it, I don't think it should be said, because what's next? My ideas aren't going to be allowed to be said, and then the chain goes like, oh well, who cares?
no, I think freedom of speech is threatened now more than it ever has been before.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how it is over there. You obviously do not have a constitution. Actually, that's a good question. How exactly does your government function over there? You don't have a constitution at
Well,
all, right?
it's mainly bureaucracy, but what happens is, again, just the way I described the neighborhood
Mm,
and provinces, every government change literally means that the entire identity of the country changes.
mm,
It goes way here, there, left, right. I mean, it changes. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much how it works. But okay, for example, so we had a military coup 3 governments away. General Pervez Musharraf, and what he did is he just made the press totally open and say what I want, cover what you want. I mean, there was like no censorship
mm.
where it was concerned. So that's what he did, right? Before that was the opposite, right? Then you had Zardari come in and he did like a middle ground. So it literally goes up and down.
Hmm.
You'd be surprised I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, forget speech and politics, even in terms of what's allowed to appear in terms of entertainment and pop culture, it goes so up and down. It's unbelievable,
Oh
you know.
yeah. And I think that's one thing people from America take for granted, because and I might be in this category where we're screeching about our freedoms getting taken away, but we're still one of the more free countries in the world, but I still feel like we're losing a lot of those freedoms, and just because we're ahead of the world in a lot of ways in that category, I don't think that's a call for us to lose that. Like a big argument I always hear is, well, every other country has socialized medicine. Every other first world country has socialized medicine. It's like, okay, so why does that mean that we have to do it? Like, if there's so many, why wouldn't you just go to one of those?
Well, that's interesting. Do you remember during the elections how there was like the whole bunch of celebrities were like, "Oh, if Trump wins, we're going to Canada. We're going here. We're going there." None of them went. Why didn't you go, you bastards?
Yeah,
Yeah.
people are all talk. I mean,
I
I
think
think I think a lot of like washed up celebrities really got their comeback by just being anti-Trump.
true.
Um, well, I mean, all these celebrities, because like none of these people that became big names when they started speaking out against Trump were doing anything in the last 10 to 15 years. Like it's all like names that you haven't heard really in the mainstream since the 90s or early 2000s, and then they just come out like, oh well, screw Donald Trump, and their faces everywhere. It's like, do you even know who the celebrity is? Like, they haven't made movies for 10 years, or at least not any good ones.
No, I mean it's interesting. I mean, like okay, like even as an extension of that topic, like even on social media, because I mean, because of the pretty much all the same groups you're in, I encounter a lot of Americans. I find so many Americans complaining, oh, like there's racism here, and there's this here, and there's this bigotry, and women are not treated well here. Okay, come over to my place. I'm sure we treat you better. Do we? I mean, it's really it's amazing how some people living in America will like to present to you that it's the most racist, most bigoted,
Hmm.
most chauvinistic country there is. I mean, look, I have my problems with America, but that's not something that I identify with living there. You know?
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
well, Americans in general, we're just a bunch of spoiled brats, and that's the truth. Because you also say like you hear like the income inequality, and it's like, all right, well, even the poorest person in America is still in the top 1% of wealth in the world. So that's what's the word? White privilege. It's actually American privilege.
yeah, yes, 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 yes. Yeah, well, we'll need to do that topic someday.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got more episodes coming. I would love to have you on again. You're my first honorary guest. I figured I'd start it off with a bang. I really didn't get a good chance to talk about what I want to do with this show. I want to bring people on that have something interesting to talk about.
Okay,
That
so
I can that I can
it's like,
that I can have a little bit of disagreement with, and have a good learning situation, have something interesting for people to listen to. Um, because that's very hard to find nowadays. So just trying to get a little bit different. So we'll definitely get into that topic. Another time.
all right. This was a
We'll,
good.
we'll
This
have
was.
yeah, we'll have a whole episode with that. The American privilege versus white privilege.
You should get somebody from the left to come over.
Yeah, 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 definitely.
I mean, honestly speaking, like, I mean, our contexts are very different, but there isn't much that we disagree upon.
Oh yeah. The only
But
thing the only thing we really disagree with is Star Wars and Star Trek. Like I
oh
am a
yeah,
Star Wars. You're Star Trek.
yeah, that we can have a disagreement on for
Yeah.
like hours and
Yeah,
hours.
we come from completely different countries. We're both deists. We're both very different kind of deists. But the biggest disagreement we have is Star Wars and Star Trek.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. That is true. Yeah, Star Wars, Star Wars. Well, I mean, look, okay, okay. I know one thing you'll agree with me on Star Wars, though.
Okay.
The Last Jedi. Come on, it was it was like a
Yeah.
left propaganda piece, man.
See, I mean, like, I didn't like any of the new movies really. I thought Rogue Squadron was okay because it kind of added to the first story pretty well, and I thought it was an interesting story. But I mean, it's just like any movie when they bring it back out, more than like 10 years before the original was made, and they try and make it something special. It always feels like, name one movie that had a sequel or any kind of secondary movie that came out 10 years after the original that was any good.
10 years after the version. T2.
T2? No, I
The
don't think that
Terminator.
was that wasn't
Terminator 2.
that wasn't 10 years afterwards. I'd have to
Oh,
double check.
oh, okay.
That
Yeah, I
was
agree.
more like 3 years.
Oh, really? I thought like Terminator 2 was in the 90s and Terminator 1 was in the 80s, no?
No. Hold on. I just lost my thing. Um, no. The time frames in the story were different, but the
Right.
actual release of it was,
Actually,
a couple of years apart.
oh, well,
Because
so I tell you one thing about Rogue One though. I actually like Rogue One, but maybe because it wasn't as Star Wars as it wasn't really a Star Wars movie,
right, it wasn't.
right? And maybe that's why I liked it. Um,
Hmm.
Shall I tell you the one gripe I had with it?
What's that?
Okay, okay, this is one scene right at the end, and it was really powerful when just Darth Vader walks on.
Hmm.
And I think they missed that opportunity because they made him appear at least two, three more times on screen before that scene. There should be no Darth Vader in that movie, only in that last scene. And that's when that last scene, when he just walks in, would have just been more powerful.
Oh
They just give
yeah,
too much screen time to Darth Vader. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
The build up wasn't there. I think what I really liked about the movie was just the overall story of it. You had this guy who was basically forced by this big powerful government to do their bidding, and he knew he had no choice in the matter. Because he was gonna either do it or be killed, and they try and get someone else to do the same thing. So he's like, the one thing I can do is I can make a flaw. So
Yeah. I mean, at
um,
least that explanation was finally given. So we stopped
yeah,
having memes of the Death Star. Okay. Oh, why did they put that there?
yeah.
That was a good explanation, man.
It
Uh,
was. I thought they did a good job with that, and you know, like I said, like the new movies, like I don't even think it's like the social justice warrior aspect that really makes it bad. Even though, I mean, a lot more people complained about that than I did about it, but I think it was just overall a shitty movie. It's just like you know, the movie sucked, whether who played who or whatever.
I tell you one which was not a good movie but had a lot of potential.
Mm.
Solo.
I have not seen that one yet, and
Um,
I am a huge Han Solo fan. They had the Star Wars books that were very big. In the late '90s, early 2000s. I think it was the early 2000s actually. And the only book I bought and I read was the Han Solo trilogy, and that was such a good book. It was all about him, Chewbacca, and Lando Calrissian. Oh, that was Han Solo is probably the greatest character in movie history.
I think then you should try out Solo.
I definitely should. I'm slacking. No, know what it is. I have my equipment that needs to be fixed. And once I get that equipment fixed, I can have like all my movies and all that kind of stuff done. But I've been kind of slacking on it because I'm not huge into movies. I usually have too much else going on.
All right. Well, but you're a Star Wars fan. You should definitely try out Solo.
Or I definitely will. It's on my list. It's like one of the things on top of my list right when I get my thing back. Um, so yeah, well, I think we've been running for about a good half hour, 45 minutes. So I'm gonna try and keep it at that. So
All right.
I'm gonna try and keep the episodes under an hour. That's gonna be my thing. Um, so I'd like to thank you for coming on as my first
No,
guest.
thank
Thank
you
you
for
for the
having.
audience for tuning into the first episode of the Defiant Lion Show. Do you have any closing remarks before we cut this off?
Hope to see you all again with Michael.
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
I'm definitely going to be inviting Kerm over for an episode two. Maybe not episode two, but another episode, obviously. Um, so again,
All
this
right.
is the first episode of the Defiant Lion Show. Hope you all enjoyed and tune in, hit subscribe, and all that kind of good stuff. Over and out.